This week on Dan Really Likes Wine, we continue what's been a pretty cool trend for 2025, bringing in guests from countries who've never appeared on the show. And this is not just our first Swedish guest, our first Scandinavian guest, and we've had many opportunities, but I was very firm with the entire team. We are only starting with the very best. I want the single, most important, most influential person in the entire Scandinavian wine industry on the show, and gee, have I got her. She's over from Sweden, where she's just wrapped up at one of the great restaurants of Sweden, moving into an exciting new space, all of which is a sideline to a cooler stroll as the president of the Swedish Sommelier Association. Janni Berndt Dahl, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Wow.
It is lovely to have you here and see you absolutely glowing, which I am going to take full credit for on behalf of South Africa and say that it's been a wonderful visit to our country that has you looking so happy.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
How much time have you spent in South Africa?
This time I arrived in Saturday, but it's my third time here now.
So you've got a bit of a feel for the country. You've met a few people. There's almost a sense of coming home to a second home. Would that be right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this relationship that you've built up, these friendships, this rapport with South Africa, tell me a bit about that and about falling in love with South Africa and South African wine.
I think that a friend of mine said, whenever you travel to South Africa for the first time, you're going to fall in love. And the first time I was here, 2023, on a sommelier symposium, that's exactly what happened. Traveling up in Hemmelanard, going to Hermanius, Swartland, meeting all the personalities behind the wines and their philosophy and the warmth of the people. It doesn't strike anything that I've ever met before. And the wines, it speaks for itself when you meet all the winemakers and taste the wines. It shows so much of the knowledge of what they do.
You've got 3 visits now under your belt and counting, because I know there will be more in the time that you've spent here and the visits that you've come. Yes, the friendships have grown and the understanding of South Africa has grown. What's differed? Are you seeing improvement, change, evolution?
Yeah, I think that for the first time I was here, 2023, it was a little bit more about getting the knowledge of, the different wine regions, the different styles of the wines, and also getting to know how they work in the vineyards. They work in a specific way up in Swartland, but in another way if you come to Franschhoek. Even if it's different grape varieties, it doesn't always apply on just about that. But now I get to dig a little bit more deeper into the knowledge. What soil type, what kind of fermentation, what kind of clones do you use? And I'm really interested into that part. And I think that it's a little bit more interesting when you get to know the winemakers a little bit more, because then you get to stretch out the knowledge a little bit more.
There's clearly a great passion for wine, but you come from a country that, while it drinks a great deal of wine, doesn't make a great deal of wine. There isn't that side of the history or heritage of wine to Scandinavia as a whole. So how did you find your way into where you are now?
I studied to become a teacher, and I've been working in the restaurant scene for 25 years. And during my studies at university, I more and more fell in love with the sense of the flavors. What happens with the flavors when you add a wine or when you add another wine. And then I just get deeper and deeper. And I had a really good sommelier at my workplace at that time. And he made it seem so easy for me to get to know things. And I told him, one day I'm going to be better than you in wine. Well, and that's just a history.
Have you encountered each other since?
Yeah, we have. And we met each other at a dinner. And this was probably just like 8 or 9 years ago. And he's not working in the industry anymore. And he said, well, Janni, I still remember that day. And you're surely right.
There was only space for one of you in the
yeah.
You found something that you have this great love for and the evolution of it. Give that to me in the sense of Swedish wine. How big is the Swedish wine culture? Is a dinner in Sweden something where you're likely to find a bottle of wine around the table, for instance?
Absolutely. I think that the wine scene in Sweden is quite big. And the knowledge of the Swedish people is also getting bigger and bigger. During the pandemics, people didn't really have that much to do. So everybody decided to learn about wine. And it also makes our job a little bit more interesting because we get to teach people in another way now than we did get to do 10 or even 5 years ago. But I mean, if I come to even just a Thursday dinner at a friend's house, there's always going to be a wine on the table. And even if you just look at my restaurant, there's not that many tables that doesn't drink wine. And people always want our, what we think is the best wine to serve. So, yeah.
You have to serve it to them as in your role as a sommelier, and that's such a key role. It's a space in South Africa that's been growing really excitingly. We're starting, I think, to really understand and value the role of a sommelier. What is it like being a sommelier in Sweden? Is it a space that people hold in esteem? Is the role of a sommelier seen as one that's greatly important?
Absolutely, but it's also quite different depending on what kind of restaurant you work in. So, for instance, for me, who's been working as a sommelier purely for many, many years, it's quite easy to just work out on the floor, talk about wine. But if you're on just a classic restaurant on the corner, it's not the same thing. You work a little bit more like a waiter, but the influence of the wine knowledge is highly valuable in any sense. So it doesn't really matter if you're just a sommelier or you're a waiter with a sommelier education. But it's also, I think it's just the knowledge.
The restaurant that you've just said goodbye to, Spesso, is a very highly regarded restaurant. It's one that's won many awards. It's spoken of in glowing terms. The kind of people who come to that restaurant are those people who generally have a pretty good knowledge and understanding of wine.
Yeah, so the guest clientele that usually comes to Spesso is a little bit on the higher level end, business people and the high level end, their knowledge is quite high. So the list has to apply to that. And that was always my main goal with that list, to have a high level, but to be affordable for everybody to drink. So the price range wouldn't apply to other restaurants in Stockholm. I was always aiming for a lower, be a little bit under the price range.
Which leads into something I'm always fascinated with, sommelier, your philosophy. There are many restaurants, often not at the very top level, but if they sell a certain amount of a certain wine, it helps the restaurant as a whole, and that's then passed on with a bit of a nudge to the sommelier. We need to shift 12 bottles of this Chardonnay this week, and then we get another case of it free. Your motivation in introducing people to wine guides what you sell, how you sell it. What's your approach on the floor? If I'm arriving at the restaurant, I've got no idea about the food and wine. How are you introducing me to what's on your wine list, to how the food plays with it, and to how to get the best out of the restaurant experience?
I always try to de-stress a little bit. I don't want a guest to feel like they don't have any knowledge, because that's, I want their experience to be the best experience that they have ever had. So I try to, get to know them a little bit. Get to know, the flavor that they would go for. And then I tend to attack that the other way, because I think that warms up the room a little bit. And also it makes it a little bit more funny. I always tend to get in a joke or two. So, yeah, wine is supposed to be fun. Food is supposed to be fun. And if you put them together, that's just a lot of fun. And it's a pleasant way of motivating guests to actually get to know more about wine.
I think that's a wonderful answer, but I would argue that it's a slightly incomplete answer, because you should have finished it with, and then I sell them some South African wine, which would be the natural extension thereof.
But that was an obvious thing.
It was indeed. What would the general Swedish wine drinker know of, understand about South African wine? Are most Swedes pretty familiar with us as a wine producing area? Will it be wine that is accepted very readily?
I mean, if I look into the community that I'm working around, I would say that the knowledge of South African wine is just getting bigger and bigger. And I would probably say that we are a few people that are striving to get South African wine bigger and bigger on the market. When I was here 2023, my knowledge of South African wine was what I was learning in school and the wines that I had been tasting. But after that, I tried to imply it a little bit more. I put it up on my wines by the glass. I took out California wines and put up South African wines instead. And I also saw that, people got more and more interested into why I did it, and also that the wines are in such a high level. So I think that's just by being there and showing people the knowledge, the knowledge has become a big higher.
All of which makes it very evident that there is a fair amount of South African wine in Sweden. What sort of wine are we finding? What are you finding? People who are not just the sommeliers, you get to drink and taste everything, but what are people gravitating towards? What interests people? What captures the attention of the Swedish palate?
I would probably say Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, especially Chardonnay, because it's quite highly on the market. But the Chenin Blancs is also getting bigger and bigger. I'm a huge fan of Chenin Blancs.
Excellent.
So I tend to sell that to people. But I think also people tend to get a little bit more on, the usually what we say Napa Valley style of wine, but that is also amplified into South African wines. So you can work with Pinotage, you can work with Bordeaux blends, a whole other style of it, but in a high level, in another price range.
The range that people have access to with those varietals and others has an interesting framework around it, because the Swedish wine system is a little different. There is a lot of government mandate in how things work. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, and I don't really myself, but I know it exists. Explain in basic terms how wine works in Sweden if somebody from South Africa wants a bottle to end up in a bottle store in Stockholm.
Oh, well, I mean, we have the monopoly. So the monopoly is owned by the government. And if you as a person would like to have a wine, you have to go to the monopoly to get it. And if you as a winemaker would want your wine on the monopoly, you have to get it in through one of the buyers of the monopoly. And that's a whole other, it's a big thing, because it's tenders. So what you do is that you present your wine, and it's tasted into a lot of other wines. And if you win the tender, there's different ways of winning tender. You can win a tender of temporarily having your wines on the shelf. You can also win a tender of being put up on the shelf. And also then you can win a tender of being on the web base. That's all usually the high level end wines. But if you don't win the tender at the buyer, you're not going to be on the monopoly. But you can still get into Sweden, because we have the importers. And the importers are the ones who, the winemaker is supposed to sell the wines to an importer, and they take it in and sell it to the tender. So that's also a way of getting into it. But the importer sells to the restaurant scene. So, and because we don't buy through the monopoly, we have importers selling to us.
So if you are sitting in Culture in Bree Street at 2 a.m. and Matt Manning presents you with this absolutely glorious glass of Cinsault, and you fall instantly in love and angels start playing harps and your world is now complete and you have to have it on your restaurant wine list, there is a way for you to make that happen.
Absolutely. And that's also a lot about contacts. I work a lot with the importers in Sweden. So if I would find a wine, I have a few of them that would probably be able to import it for me.
I'm very glad to hear that. What about the food and wine? I go back to my lone trip to Stockholm, where I went full tourist. I did the ABBA tour and I did everything. And I remember sitting in a hugely overpriced restaurant in the old town and ordering a piece of reindeer so I could feel what I thought was properly Swedish. I suspect nobody in Sweden actually eats that on a regular basis. But anyway, I had that with some elderberries and a glass of wine. I can't even remember what it was. But what would if I was coming to dinner at your new restaurant, which we'll talk about in a moment, what could I expect to eat, and what sort of wine would you then be presenting with me if it is a dish that for you encapsulates the heart of Swedish cuisine?
Well, I mean, the new restaurant, it's a little bit more of a modern take of Nordic food, so it would probably be a reindeer or something like that. And for the wine, a wine with that's quite easy. You could easily go for Pinotage. That's really nice because it has the really nice acidity, meets up with the elderberries or whatever kind of sides you decide to have. Or you can also go for like a little bit leaner, easygoing style of wine. But the menu isn't official yet, so.
All right. Well, make sure there's reindeer and Pinotage on there, and I shall be over.
Absolutely.
Are we allowed to know the name of the new restaurant?
Yeah. So this restaurant was actually Sweden's first 2-star restaurant.
Ah.
Yes, or I think even Scandinavia's first. And it's called Edsbacka Krog. And what yes, and what we're doing is that we're taking back what was once born by the first owner, but modernizing it. So we're not aiming for a star. We're just aiming for a high level end with the focus on service and really nice food.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping there is that reindeer and pinotage on the menu because I have some pinotage here because we can't do a wine podcast with a great sommelier without having a glass of wine. I think you know the siblings of this particular wine. This is from the house of Hamilton Russell, where Anthony's winemaker Emil makes some great Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, which I think you know quite well. But this, I'm not sure if you had this one before. This is the Pinotage under the Ashbourne label. And from a slightly cooler climate, the chance to try our grape that's celebrating its 100th birthday this year.
Wow.
Of course, give it to you a little trepidation being such a highly regarded sommelier. There we go. Cheers, and lovely to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, give it a try. Let me know what you think. I know that Emil Ross is sitting nervously waiting for his phone to ring with feedback.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Are we happy?
Yeah, really happy. Really happy. Really nice acidity. And also, yeah, really nice fruit. Long.
And I think not the first time we've said this in recent months on the show, but a real illustration of where Pinotage is finding its feet after a sometimes troubled history, but a really, really cool and rewarding interpretation of the grape, and one I think Emil is rightly proud of.
No, I agree. And I think I said that yesterday, actually, when I was talking about Pinotage. The last time I was here 2 years ago, I didn't really get the sense of it. I've been trying to, sometimes it takes a little bit of time and you peel off. What about it? And then when I was here in May this year, I tasted a lot of different Pinotage wines. And I get a little bit more of an epiphany. And I realized that the style of Pinotage, it's settled when it's supposed to be like this. You have the fruit that is rounding out with a little bit of heatness of the alcohol. Really nice tannin structure, but acidity just keeps on flowing. It's beautiful.
It's a grape with such a bizarre history, given its initial versions bore no resemblance to the parents whatsoever. You were pretty convinced it had to be adopted. It couldn't possibly be the child of Cinsault and of Pinot Noir, and yet now it's come back to something that's a lot more resembling what that heritage is, and I think we're all the better for it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right. You are well placed to make these assessments, not just because you are the president of the Swedish Sommelier Association, but am I right in saying you are Sweden's first ever champagne knight?
Not Sweden's first ever, but I'm a Swedish female sommelier working on the floor. There are other females that has been awarded with the same. But there's not that many working on the floor. Many of them are working with as wine writers or educations or importers. Equally important, but I also think it's important to show that a female working on the floor get awarded with it. And that's also one of the reasons why it gets so much out in the media. But I'm really happy about the other female that also gets the award, because it's important that women are shown in the industry as well.
It is an enormously cool title to be a champagne knight.
Yeah.
Other than never having to pay for another glass of champagne ever when you visit, what does it actually mean? What is the honor? Why is it conferred?
It's conferred as you've done something to change for champagne in Sweden, and being a good, role model for the brand of champagne. I've always been striving to work hard on different brands, smaller champagne houses, and I think that shows a lot, getting that award.
It's a well-deserved one, and it's the first time we've ever had a champagne night, the best of my knowledge and show. So it's many, many firsts today, and it's all part of this continuing story, but it's certainly not one that is anywhere close to finished. You have the new restaurant about to open, new chapter in this journey of yours. What else is there still to do? What would Janni Sommelier like to be able to say in 5 years' time when we have you back on the show? In the last 5 years, this has happened in Swedish wine, and I've been a part of it.
Well, I mean, my main goal is always to be a really good role model for upcoming sommeliers. That's one of the reasons I do what I do. It's not just because I get bored of not having anything to do, because believe me, I'm busy. But no, I always want to push other and the younger generation forward, and making them know that their knowledge are important and their opinion are also important. Their palates are never going to be as sharp as ours, because we have had the opportunity to taste wines that people will never get the opportunity to taste, just because I went to become a sommelier during that time when wine wasn't as expensive as it is today. But it's my job to teach them that palate and to make them get the opportunity to taste those kinds of wines in another direction. Meaning, maybe you can't taste Arnaunt because that's really expensive, but maybe you can taste something that's quite like from another part of the world or something, in the sense of getting the knowledge of just the producers, or even just vineyards or clones.
It suggests that the future of wine education in Stockholm is in good hands of people like yourself. When I come over, which I'm planning to do again because I saw far too little of Stockholm, as I've got you here, before I finish off on a wine note, if I am coming to Stockholm, beyond doing the ABBA tour and going out on a canal and looking at some islands and hanging out in the old town, what else is there about Stockholm that maybe as the tourist I might not initially know about, that I should really do to get the best out of the city?
Well, I mean, there are other museums that you actually should visit than ABBA, even if ABBA is amazing and they did something for Sweden. There is also a whole other food scene. And the food scene in Stockholm is amazing. The restaurants, you're not supposed to go to the old town to eat. You're supposed to go to the local restaurants, and restaurants that we Sams goes to, or other people working in the industry, where you get to meet the other people that works in the industry. But if you don't work with wine and you just want to come to Sweden as a tourist, you have to do the Vasa Museum. You have to eat the Skagen. You have to do the herring. There are things that, amplifies what actually the Swedish culture is, rather than just going on a boat tour or visiting the old town or the castle. We don't do that when we're off.
Probably similarly in that Cape Townians don't get up Table Mountain terribly often, but you come to visit and that's what you do. It's the nature of touring and seeing different parts of the world. You mentioned the herring. What wine am I drinking with herring if I'm visiting?
Beer. No, you could probably easily go with just Riesling, but usually beer and a schnapps.
I did that in Stockholm. I did that in Copenhagen as well, and it did work out rather well. A final question for you, because we have so many of our great South African wines who we'd love to find a home for in other parts of the world, and Sweden is such an important market for South Africa. What more could South African producers do to catch the eye of the Swedish market and to try and work through a slightly challenging system to find a home in places like Stockholm?
I actually think that they're doing quite a good job, and also during these kinds of imported days like Cape Wine. This year there are so many Swedes here, and that's highlighting it.
It seems like there's actually nobody left in Sweden at the moment. Every second person I meet is a Swedish wine person.
Yeah, that's how it works. No, but it's. I think I had a conversation yesterday with someone that said, "You're so many Swedish people here," and I said, "Yeah, but it's also important because some of them comes from wine clubs, and they come home and talk to their people, in the everyday life people, and they talk about what they've been experiencing, which also is important for the community to get to know the South African wines. This is a perfect way. But I also think that for me, who's been here 3 times now, 2 of them hosted by Vosa, it's that's one of the main topics of it, being shown South Africa to sommeliers in this way, because it's so much warmth.
We have been very fortunate to have some great people come over. You're very much amongst them. And knowing that we've got such ambassadors for South African wine in other parts of the world is so important, and it's very uplifting to have. I know we're going to see much more of you in South Africa because it's clearly found a place in your heart. But when you do get back, very best of luck with the new restaurant and best of luck with continuing this journey. And I think what's coolest about it is how full circle you've come and that you set out to become a teacher. And I think very much you are still a teacher. Just the subject matter might be a little different to what you might initially have planned, but I've certainly learned through the course of today. Many others have as well. Thank you for it. And I look forward to a glass of pinotage and a reindeer steak when I arrive at the restaurant whose name I shall learn to pronounce properly by the time I arrive there for the proper Swedish experience as opposed to the one I had in the old town years ago.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure visiting. Amazing conversations. I'm really happy that I got to meet you. Thank you.
Perfect. And please let us know. I know it's in Swedish, but let us know when your new podcast is out. And I shall learn Swedish just to be able to listen to it.
Yeah, I can do some English words just so you understand a little bit.
That might help. She is the president of the Swedish Sommelier Association, a champagne night, a teacher turned sommelier extraordinaire, and now at the helm of what is the most talked about up and coming restaurant in Stockholm. Most importantly of all, though, we've had her as a very special guest on Dan Really Likes Wine, Janni Berndt Dahl, joining us this week.